Welcome to Tilt Shift. I'm Tim.
I'm Bryan.
And today we're going to be looking at one that I don't think it could be made today, just because things have changed so much. We're talking about the 2000 film Remember the Titans. And if you're familiar with that film, it is based on true events from 1971 in Virginia, where integration had recently happened. And so it's about this high school football team from T.C. Williams and a lot of the racial tensions going on there. Today, the reason I said I don't think it'd be made because today a lot of movies are trying to push people apart, and this one is bringing people together. It's about unity. It's rated PG for thematic elements and some language, and I think rightly so. There's some tense situations, and but
based on the content, they're engaging as well. It's definitely very tense, but it's well handled, for sure.
And speaking of not being made today, who made this film, Bryan? You were surprised.
Disney made this film. Right. I was literally in shock when I saw it was Walt Disney Productions that produced this film, because their ideas today are so woke. But this movie is totally opposite of that, just 23, 24 years ago.
Right, and it's interesting when you watch something like this where it is about bringing people together. Today we hear so much from CRT, critical race theory, which seeks to divide, and what we're always told is, what, you're against teaching black history? No, we're not against teaching history. What we are against is trying to divide people constantly and create strife when things were improving, as we're going to see in this film. So I mentioned before, it's based on true events. Based on. So there is embellishment.
There's some artistic license,
right?
Yes,
quite a bit actually. So the school had already been integrated for several years. In this movie, they make it seem as this is the first year.
Okay.
But what had happened that year is that busing happened, and so the three high schools in Alexandria had sort of reconfigured. So what they did is send all the juniors and seniors to T.C. Williams, this school.
Okay.
And so it kind of creates an all-star football team or any sports program. You take the best from three schools,
juniors and
seniors,
seniors, put them all there.
You got new people that you're not used to. So there is some tension that's going on as a result. And there's still some tension going on in the community, as we'll see. But in the movie, they go undefeated. In real life, they went undefeated.
Right.
We were unstoppable.
So I mentioned Alexandria had some racial tensions. Well, their games were being played on Saturday afternoons at that time because there was some vandalism and some different things going on during the
Riots
evening games. And so they said, well, if everything's in the daylight, then it's going to cut down on the amount of problems, because people tend to do a little more problematic stuff when it's dark out. They can get away with things. They had just gone through a 3-night riot the year before in the city because there was a 19-year-old black man who was killed by a 7-Eleven clerk who accused him of stealing. So kind of things that we've seen recently in some of our major cities, some of the riots that happen as a result of certain actions like that.
And I think the movie does a good job overall of really showing the tensions and showing people's views and some of the racist ideas that were floating around, especially in that particular area, and showing the conflict that they caused. And so I think it does a good job of really depicting those things, I think, in a pretty honest way.
I think so too. Another thing that they show in the movie, there's a scene where one of the white students wants to take two of his teammates, black students, into a restaurant, and they're like, "No, guys, they won't do it." He's like, "Come on, it's fine. Nobody has a problem."
Right.
He's unaware of how.
He's from California.
Yeah, he doesn't realize it's going to be like that. But in real life, there was one of the players talked about how there were times where they had to get food from a side window or something like that of a restaurant rather than being able to go in. So that kind of was similar. Sports can be such a unifying force in our community, if you want to call it racial tensions, and we say race. You and I both know there's one blood, there's one human race.
There's one race.
So that we want to make sure we're clear about that.
And the Bible's clear on that.
Yes, it is, and that's why we're clear about it. And we'll talk more about it as we go. But if you think about in sports, I had the opportunity to talk to a major college football program one time, to the players on that team, actually a couple times, but one time.
I was supposed to go do that, and I couldn't do it, and then you got to go and do it for me, or not for me, but do it instead of me.
I'm not bitter, really.
Good things come to those who wait.
Man, I was a bit jealous. That's real. I'm so glad it went well. Though. I know it went well.
So I was
happy for you, truly.
It was really neat. So it was right after the Charlottesville, riot that happened, and so it was the Saturday after that. And the chaplain contacted me, and he said, "So I want you to speak on how we're all one blood." Now, just so you know, most of the players on the team are African-American athletes from the South, and we're going to have our border regions there, a bunch of older white men from the South. And so when my topic went up on the screen, it was it was tense in the room.
No doubt.
But as soon as you get into it and you help people realize we all are one blood, that we all go back to Adam, and you help them realize the truth of that. And then you point out, look, you guys already know this on a sports team. If you're the running back, you do not care what color the guy is blocking for you. Is he doing his job? If you're the quarterback, you do not care what color the guy is that you're throwing to.
Yeah.
Is he catching the ball? Is he getting open? Is everybody playing their part? And what a great source of unity that can be. And I think it's one of the reasons why over the last 5 or 6 years or so, in some of like the NFL and even some of the, when you have players kneeling and all, when they're bringing a lot of the
woke secular ideology
CRT, some of the bringing so much political stuff into sports. Why so many people get so frustrated with it because it's taking something that can be so uniting and making it so divisive.
And I think, too, also for a lot of people, sports is an outlet. They just want to watch sports to kind of turn their brain off and enjoy something entertaining. And so if you want to do that and then you're watching your favorite basketball team or football team or whatever, and then they're promoting this, really it's garbage. It's a garbage ideology that's so divisive on purpose.
What a piece of junk.
And that's what you're getting from the announcers, from the players, from what's written on the court or the field. Then you're like, no, I'm trying to I want to break from this stuff, and then that as well. So yeah, I think it's a double whammy.
So speaking of embellishment, so they're changing the story. Is that the same thing as like revisionism, historical revisionism? So because they are revising it, they're tweaking it, but they're keeping the heart of the story, they're keeping the gist of the story, and they may be just adding things for dramatic effect, which almost every movie based on a true story does that to some degree or another. But in recent years, we've seen really like historical revisionism. You think of something like The Woman King, which the movie itself is really well made. The acting really is done well, cinematography, all of that. It's about these female warriors from the Dahomey people, and there actually were female warriors historically from that tribe in Western Africa. They were like the king's bodyguards, and so that part of the story is true. What they don't get right is they make them in this film almost as if they're against slavery. Yeah, they only do it when they have to, but they're kind of against slavery, and in reality, these were the group of people who were involved in the slave trade. They were enslaving others and selling them to the slavers who would come to their shores. In fact, they kept trying to...
Which is a convenient fact that is often left out of many.
Yes, in fact, the way that it ended is the British blockaded their port so they couldn't sell any slaves. The British made them stop slave trading, and yet this film takes these people and lionizes them and makes them seem like the ideal, the opposite of who they really were.
Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Okay.
Doing that, and it's similar to like Netflix with the Cleopatra special. I didn't watch that one, but they in that one they make Cleopatra black, and yet we know she wasn't. She's Macedonian, and there are busts of Cleopatra there. We know similar what she looked like, and so they're doing that. It's not just revisionism. There's a
difference. So for Remember the Titans, it's just meant to add drama to the film, but the core content, the core ideas that are being dealt with are true, right? That's not been changed, and the parties involved. Whereas these movies are trying to redefine who's right and who's wrong, and who did what as good or evil. That's a totally different thing.
Right. That's exactly right. So in our first clip we're going to watch, Coach Boone, played by Denzel Washington.
Does a good job.
Yeah, he usually does. I think he seems to be almost the same character all the time. Like he's always a serious guy.
But he plays it so well.
Oh, he does it really, really well. He's selected over Coach Yost, who probably was more qualified, definitely was more qualified. So it seemed to be more of a political decision at the time. It turns out to be the right decision for the school. And so at the beginning of this clip, you might hear some shouts in the background, some
reflecting the thoughts of the day and the tensions of the day.
Yeah, so there might be some racist comments that you hear or terminology that you hear. So in not necessarily in this clip so much, but in some of the other ones we're going to see.
Other clips before this.
And so this one,
watch the movie,
we see him at home, and many of the people in town, African Americans in town, show up to welcome him. They're very excited about him.
Coach Boone, I'm Charles Campbell. This here is my boy Julius. He can be the finest defensive end in the whole state if you push him to it.
I hear a lot about you.
You like an answer to our prayers.
No, wait a minute. Now, I'm not an answer to your prayers. I'm not a savior or Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King, or the Easter Bunny. I'm a football coach, that's all. Just.
Which is right. He is. He's like,
the guy goes on and said, but you're our coach. Yeah.
He wants to set the expectations in the right place. Right? I'm a football coach.
Yeah, he's not Jesus.
You got that right.
Now, sports can be used, as you mentioned already, to bring unity. But again, you got that right perspective on that.
And in a sense, I understand. This is going to be the first time maybe that they have a black football coach in their town, and
that's
so
legitimate.
in a sense, he's breaking barriers, and that's helpful. That can be a good thing. It's sort of like, do you remember the old commercial with Charles Barkley? I am not a role model.
I do remember
Parents
that.
should be role modeled, and he took so much heat for that because the intent behind the message was right. Your parents should be your role model. Stop looking up to these athletes who mess up all the time, especially like Barkley. I remember when he was arrested for throwing some guy through a window in a bar, that challenged him. And
He has some anger issues.
yeah, but at the same time, he has to recognize he is a role model, and that thousands, if not millions, of people are going to be looking up to him. And so I think in the similar way, coach is a role. He's more than just a coach to a lot of people.
And it's a positive thing for them in that community. So he, in that sense, he's an answer to their prayers and that. But he is just a man, and he's just a football coach, and don't overshoot that. But and also, it kind of reminds us of what happens today so often. That is, we expect so much from our leaders and political leaders that sometimes we exalt them to a platform that they really should not have in our lives and our thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Can they do good things? Can they be helpful? They can if they use their power in the right way.
Yeah,
of
they can
course.
also do a lot of harm.
Right, and they can do a lot of harm. And so it's right to honor those who do good and to really critique those who do bad. That's not that. But we don't want to exalt them to the level of thinking, if we can just get that guy elected, then that'll fix all of our problems.
We
If
just
we
get
can
this celebrity to our cause.
Yeah,
everything.
if that person just got saved, then everybody would love Christianity. No, it's so much more than that. And God is the ultimate person that we need to be looking to for those sorts of changes. His word, His truth.
Yeah,
and the
ultimately, this
gospel.
world is not going to know peace without the Prince of Peace.
That's right.
And that's Jesus Christ.
That's the truth.